Hello there, mic test. Hello there. As we have been in the last couple of live sessions, we've been working on our Vickers Wellington Mark stroke C172nd scale by Airfix. Hopefully you're sort of following along and stuff. Whole idea of this live session is for me just to show you some general modeling live. You guys get in on the chat over there, ask any questions that you want to ask, and I'll try and answer them live for you here on the Genessis Models live session. So let's get cracking back on with this. As you can see, our Wellington here, let's just get you a bit more better on camera. The Wellington here is getting close to some actual sort of final sort of going into the spraying stage, but there is a few little areas I still need to sort of tidy up first, a few little kind of pieces, all the little fiddly bits really, like landing gear and stuff. So you know, feel free to throw in those questions. What I need to do is get out some like foam and stuff, right, so we can cover up some of these areas. Right, one we got right at the back here. It's quite easy with this foam stuff, you know, nice sharp new sharp blade, and you can just cut through this pretty easy. I always just eyeball this because you can just so easily just squash it in, and then it just expands. As it expands, it just nicely just covers everything. So it's really a good one to use. Maybe get I do like to get like a little pin in a little vise here, and we can really sort of like poke it in where we need to poke it and stuff. Right, so that's looking good. Another little piece just to stop it spraying right down. Hopefully this will do nicely in the back there. As you can see, it just so nicely expands. Just all these little things, time-consuming little things where you know that you need to sort of do. All right, so that's that at the back there. Quite happy with that. Flip it over though, and we've got this entire sort of Bombay area, which is going to take potentially a fair bit, and probably needs something in there as well to sort of lock it down. So I'm just sort of, oops, headbutting the camera, but just sort of quick guesstimation. Again, general sort of size. So that just cuts through that like a knife through, but if you've got a brand new blade, and then we can just sort of poke most of this in here. I mean, I don't worry too much with getting this. I mean, as long as you stop it from really sort of getting inside and maybe sort of accidentally getting some overspray that maybe sprays up and onto some like inside of the canopy. I mean, you really don't want that, and to get rid of most of the area. But you may also sort of notice that, you know, you might sort of get a bit of sprayage on a bit of the wheel well doors and stuff. I mean, it's not like sort of perfect, but you could be faffing around for ages just sort of trying to get all this perfect, when really, I mean, right at the end you can just come along with a paintbrush and just tidy up any sort of areas, as long as you're happy with it, really, I guess. But that should be rather good just there. I do need Malaysia plastic putty, but what you may notice is if you sort of look where you've done it, you may notice that, you know, you get a couple of air bubbles. This stuff, you know, you put one coat on and you can get some air bubbles sort of come afterwards. So, you know, it's no trouble just to sort of come along, inject, and add a second coat if need be, just to cover up any air bubbles that have been made. All right, so just getting that cotton wool bed. That looks nice and perfect there. Right now, and generally I like to just sort of, I mean, I did do quite a bit in the last session, but you know, just generally sort of looking everywhere and just sort of getting these sort of final, you know, any sort of gaps, maybe oozed out glue. You might need to do a little bit of sanding, a little bit of filling, maybe, you know, just sort of generally checking all over and making sure everything's, you know, all good, because we are literally, this is sort of getting ready for a bit of a spray stage. All right, I think we're going to be good, although we have got a little bit, what looks like a bit of just down here, looks like a bit of glue has sort of oozed over the top, and I'm just scraping that with a blade like so. I mean, if you're good with the blade, you shouldn't have to really come back with a sanding stick, but you can still anyway, just to make sure that's going to be nicely feathered in with the rest of the plastic. All right. Remember, feel free, throw any questions up. I can show you something maybe you've been working on, or something like that. Any advice, tips, tricks, you name it. Right, next thing, I do like to keep my instructions out, because we're at this stage now where, as I say, we've got all the what is it, all the landing gear bits and stuff. It is a little bit of a time-consuming process, right? But you know, it needs to be done nevertheless. All right, so I'm just getting out the right sprues. And starting off with our wheels. There we go. I mean, if you want, you can sort of cut them off one by one just to make sure you got the numbers right, but I mean, they should fit nevertheless anyway, but we'll play it on the safe side. Where are the wheels anyway? Kind of getting ahead of myself here, I think. 23 to 21. There we go. Nice, simple. Where's my blade? Damn. Misplaced my blade. There we go. There we go. I know some people go on about the quality or something of the video. I mean, really, this is live, you know. I mean, you don't get like, you know, perfect picture when you go live, to be fair. I mean, this is more of a sort of, you know, me communicating with you guys, having those live questions and stuff. I mean, all my videos, you know, is all in HD and everything. It's just, you know, when we go live, I mean, you know, you can't get that super quality HD when live. All right, to be fair. So I'm just trimming up these wheels. All right, just getting rid of the tabs from the sprue. All right, I mean, we could sand these down later. All right, gluing them together. Good old Mrs.'s pegs just to hold it. I like to press it with my fingers first. I'm using Mr. Cement S this time because I'm running out of my Tamarack Spin Cement. If you've ever wondered, I mean, there really isn't a massive difference between the products. You know, you won't go wrong with either one that you pick. Right. I did do a video on it really, and I think some Mr. Cement S had the better advantage of it evaporating quicker on the surface, so you didn't have any sort of marks on the surface of your pieces. But apart from that, I mean, they're both pretty good. So there's one wheel. Oh, thanks, Mark. Nice to know you're watching it at work and not actually doing any work, but you know, we're all jealous. I would like to get a bit of spraying actually done tonight, so I might skip some of these little bits and maybe sort of do it off camera later on, just to get some spraying going. So I might skip this landing gear bits. There we go. That's actually a little bit wonky, that piece, but we can sand that better later. Yeah, almost dropped that. Okay, let's see what I can get away with not doing and doing off camera. Get some spraying going. What have we got? Can skip the landing gear. Sweet. Maybe this bit of I'll skip that as well. So I'll have to seal that up. We'll do the bombs off camera. I want to leave the engine cowl off because we do have our engine here, which I want to do like a natural metal finish, and we need to spray that separately and stuff. So I'm going to leave all this engine cowl business off for later. I'll probably leave the MGs as well. Moving along. Okay, there's a few little bits that stick out off the model which you don't really want on while you're spraying because they normally break. Probably leave the propellers. So yeah, actually, do you know what? We probably could just jump into some spraying if I just seal in a few other things. Let's just throw this into the box out the way. Get ready for some spraying. Remember, feel free to throw up any questions you have. Let us know what you're building lately, what problems you might be having with whatever you're building at the moment. All right, let's get at this foam, and I want to cover up this end. Although I haven't really sprayed in that end, so I'll do that after I've sprayed here, these wheel wells. Because you can sort of spray the wheel wells first and then, you know, cover them up, or you could like spray the whole model, come back, mask up, spray the wheel wells, whatever. But I want to sort of move along with some spraying, get some exciting stuff going. So yeah, we'll just leave that at that. So first things first, you know, now we're spraying. Whenever it comes to doing any kind of spraying, you really do need to be, you know, fairly sort of on the cleanly side, right? Because any sort of fingerprints, you know, you've had a kebab or something and your fingers are all greasy and then you start messing about with your models, you know, all that's going to get transferred. So, you know, I'm just getting out my gloves, getting these on. I normally do not put it on that hand, to be fair. I have been ill the past week, so I'm a bit out of it, to be fair, but you know, we'll get there. Got a question from Jim about painting everything with a brush instead of using an airbrush. Would it be a disadvantage to leave? Would it be a disadvantage to leave parts on the sprue? Well, I mean, I don't really ever sort of paint my models with a paintbrush. You know, modern day airbrush all the way, but they are expensive. But you can still, even with a normal paintbrush, produce some really stunning work. When it comes to leaving pieces on the sprue, it's totally up to you, really. I mean, you know, when we sort of, I don't know, we've got our guns just here. There's nothing stopping us from coming along, cocktail stick, bit of blue tack, right, and we can just sort of, you know, stick things down like so. Have free hand to spray it. If you've got a paintbrush, it's a little bit more sort of tricky, you know, to have something sort of stable for you to actually, you know, come along with a paintbrush and be able to sort of paint it without it falling off or something like that. So keeping it on the sprues, yes, but then you do have to sort of weigh up the fact that once you painted it, you've got to cut it off the sprue, and where you've cut it off the sprue, you've got to probably come back and just retouch it up with a paintbrush. It's all, you know, your personal preference. It's all about what is the piece you want to paint. You know, a lot of things, it's sort of like, it all sort of depends. Can you, you know, put it on the end of a cocktail stick? Can you, say, drill a hole into it to stick a cocktail stick in there? Or you need to put blue tack on the end? You know, do you need to go out and get some tweezers like this, and you can sort of, you know, hold these pieces like so? It all depends upon how you can mount it. But it's the whole idea is being able to hold the piece in a way in which you can nicely, securely sort of paint it without sort of touching it loads, right? And have full access to it. And really, you want to be able to sort of paint a piece fully in one go, and not have to sort of, you know, potentially, you know, in this case, if we use these lock-in tweezers, if I sprayed this, I would have to then stop, let it dry, take it off the tweezers, put the tweezers somewhere else so I can spray where the tweezers were. So it's like I'm not getting full coverage. You know, it's all about getting it all sprayed in one sort of go. So yeah, doing it on, you know, leaving it on the sprue, leaving a piece on the sprue does mean you're going to have to still cut it off the sprue. You're still going to have to paint up where it was on the sprue. So you're not sort of doing it all in one sort of go. So it's all about using those techniques with, you know, all the cocktail sticks and all that goody stuff. So back to the model now. What I like to do is I get a product called IPA. I'll get it out actually, because I do get a lot of questions about IPA. Right, it's ISO, you know, propanol alcohol. It's, you know, basically alcohol, very flammable. It's used for like cleaning stuff, cleaning products. You can use it as part of an ingredient for making your own thinners, for making your own airbrush cleaner. It's a really sort of good product to go out and get, and it is quite cheap if you go out and sort of buy it like I have here in, what is this, a litre tub or something. You know, it's a really good product to have. As I say, if you like to make your own airbrush thinners, your own airbrush cleaner, it's good for like thinning down paints with as well. But it's also another thing I like to use it for, which is cleaning the model. I have put it in this pot here just to make it a bit easier to handle. Right, and I'm just getting a kitchen paper towel. Right, I'm just going to sort of get a bit of this on the end of the kitchen paper towel, and it's just a simple case of just sort of in circles rubbing across the model. And what this will do, it will, one, as you can see, hopefully right? There's a bit of red paint on there. I'm basically cleaning up any sort of oversprayed paint. I'm cleaning up definitely grease, which is a big one. Any mold release agents, right? So this is just making the surface absolutely perfect for spraying, which is what we want. So we want to do this all over the model. I want to be careful around our what did we use now? I do have it in here just to show you. Where you gone? Our Mascal by Humbrol, right? We want to be careful rubbing around there because it will sort of react with it. So I'm not sort of going right up to it and rubbing it on there, right? It gets rid of like any hairs or all sorts of bits of debris. In fact, I have forgotten a little bit just here. I do want to get my putty out. So I'm just filling it. This is what I like about the plastic, Fleho plastic putty, is I don't have to wait for it to dry. Because I'm not after like a seamless finish. I just want to fill this gap so it's not like as big a hole as it was and it's a bit more sort of feathered in with the rest of the model. And there you go, pretty sort of filled in. Hopefully you've seen that on camera. I mean, I do have loads and loads of videos on the Genessis Models website where you can sort of see all these videos in HD and everything, and it's all nicer that way. Right, so I just need to make sure I go over all of the model. Right, also from this stage in, I mean, you know, you've got to sort of be conscious about the whole fingerprints, grease and stuff. So, you know, I mean, if I was to not finish spraying this tonight, which I probably won't, right, I've got to be sort of conscious that next time I pick this up, right, it's probably been sitting down somewhere, probably got bits of dust that has built up, you know, and all these kind of things. So just to be conscious that I could clean it now, I could do a bit of spraying, but next time I pick it up, it'll need another clean again. Right, and you can potentially do this between coats as well. I mean, I probably wouldn't use the IPA, but you know, getting out like anti-static cloths to sort of get rid of any dust and debris. There we go. And I would still come back with an anti-static cloth after this because this tissue is good for sort of getting up all your grease and cleaning it up, but the anti-static cloth gets rid of all your bits of dust. It really sort of gets that all good. Oh, I need to fill that one in as well. Didn't realise that. There we go. Cotton wallboard, just wipe up the excess. And then we just leave behind plastic putty in all the nooks and crannies there. Right. Just gonna, you do want to sort of keep changing your kitchen paper towel. Don't stick with the same one and just keep on using it and trying to save kitchen paper towels because it does break up a bit after time. So having a nice fresh one's good. Or it does start to break up. Don't forget the underside. Right, and then this is going to be all good for some priming. Right, and the cool thing is as well, because it's IPA, it's the same stuff that they use for what is it, electronics, like cleaning electrical circuitry and all that kind of stuff. So what it does, it evaporates really, really quickly, which is a good thing, because then you haven't got, like, you know, any liquid sort of staying on the surface, you know, maybe pooling up in nooks and crannies, and then you come along and spray on top of something that's pulled up with water and it's all sort of messy. You know, the IPA just evaporates really nice and quick, and you haven't got to worry about any of that. Right, so good product to get hold of. I got mine from eBay if you're sort of interested. I think it was no more than like a tenner or something. I brought it like ages ago. I mean, it lasts that long, right? But I mainly brought it to make my own airbrush thinners, homebrew thinners. Right, so that's the kitchen paper towel. Got rid of like all the dirt and grease and grime. Right, but then I do like to get my anti-static cloth out. Right, as you can see, anti-static cloth, and I like to use this just to sort of quickly rub over and get up any sort of we might have, hairs, maybe even you know, even our kitchen paper towel is possibly left behind bits of, you know, bits of torn up kitchen paper towel or something. Right, this is just like just to make sure we got all the nasty bits off. Right, and we should all be pretty damn good for doing some spraying now. Right, the surface is just going to be absolutely lovely to spray on. Right, it should help things stick a lot better, because what can happen, I mean, if you have got some grease or mold release agent left over on the plastic, you know, it might be like a little area, you spray on that, over that. I mean, you might be able to spray it down nicely. I mean, sometimes it kind of like the paint pools and separates and it doesn't look right. Right, but sometimes you can still get away with it. But what it does do is it doesn't give it the best of a bond to the plastic, and when that happens, you can have all sorts of potential peeling and cracking of the paint later on. It doesn't always happen, but you know, that possibility of it happening can sort of be right pain. Right, maybe as another last resort, we can just get out the airbrush, blast it all over, blow off any last bits of hairs or fibres or anything like that you might have missed. Just to double check. Right, and that is looking good, ready for some spraying. So just going to whack down some kitchen paper towels. I'm going to cover my FA18, that's just at the back here. Right, so I don't want that getting messed up by spraying, because that's something I'm videoing later on. I mean, I would be sort of like throwing this into the spray bay where I've got my extractor fan and everything, but it's getting it all on camera. Right, so you want to be sort of, you know, the usual, get your face masks out, you know, extractor fans, windows, doors open, all that kind of goodies. Right, so first off, you want a primer. Right, in this case, grey primer is normally a good colour to go with. Not always, but most of the time, if I can just find my grey primer. There's all sorts of primers out there. Some are better than others. Where's my grey primer gone? It's probably when you've got too many primers in your drawer. Okay. Is it over there? One sec. Here we go. I got some AK Interactive primer here. I mean, Ammo does a primer, Vallejo do primers. There's all sorts of primers that you can get your hands on. Really, what goes down really well as a good primer is it's normally the waterborne polymers. It's not just your average pot of paint, acrylic paint. It's like the polyurethane polymers and that kind of stuff. It just sort of gives you such a much more sort of nicer, smoother surface. It sticks so much nicer. It just makes a very good, perfect base for all your paints to go on and go down. And you know, you're spraying your model grey, which is going to be a nice colour primer for all your spraying to come. Right, so I'm just really giving this a good shake. It does have a little ball bearing, as you can probably hear. In fact, this one sounds a bit like there's a big blob of paint in there. I might need to change this, I don't know. I know some of the paints I've had for years. Right, so I've got to be careful. Now with this stuff, it should just go straight. I think it's this one. It should just go straight into your colour cup, and it's already sort of thin to this nice. Ooh, careful. Sometimes when you haven't used the paint for a while, which I haven't, the first bit that comes out is normally like a big blob, right? And we don't want that, because that's just going to like block up our paintbrush, which sometimes you got to just sort of like squeeze it out a bit and try and get that first little bit, or you can pull it down, take the top off, because it's normally what's stuck in there, which I think we've got here. So we can get out a cocktail stick and just maybe sort of like poke it through and just get out any of the dried bits, just to not have any nasty problems, right? So I don't want to end up having to clean my airbrush out straight away before I've even got started, right? And what is a good idea as well, I mean, with these polymers, they do dry quite sort of bitty. Well, not on the model, but they can dry around the tops and around the lid areas quite quickly and quite bitty. And once you've shaken it, it is kind of good to sort of maybe just leave it for a bit, just to let any sort of bits that are in here sort of float down to the bottom. So when you pour it out, you've just got like the good stuff, but you still need to shake it. That's sort of like the one problem with the polymer type primers, is they can be a little bit on the bitty side. In saying that, I mean, there's nothing stopping you from going off and getting any old sort of acrylic paint and just priming your model that way if you really sort of want to. Right, so don't worry too much. Right, it's just this is probably going to need a bit of thinners actually. So I'm just getting out my homebrew thinners, which I've just decanted into this old Vallejo pot, right? Because that is coming out quite thick. I think it is like an old pot of paint, which is why it's coming out so thick, right? But basically, you know, it takes a bit of experience, but you know, when you first get started, you have that sort of milky type of consistency, right? And then spraying on the kitchen paper towel, see how we're spraying, and then we can start spraying it on the model. Now, when you first spray on your first coat, don't just blast it on, right, and get some heavy coverage, right? What I like to do is not even put on a standard coat. I like to just give it such a light misting, right, to the point where, I mean, you're hardly sort of noticing it. It's a very sort of misty coat, right? Because the whole idea is we're just getting that first light coat down, right, which helps all that other coats of paint stick a little bit better. right? Plus it dries really quickly, and it just makes our next sort of coat of paint that we put on there stick better. Right, so I'm just cutting to where by just pressing down the trigger. Right, I've literally just give this a quick spray. I mean, it's hardly noticeable. It's dried really quickly, so then I can come in with like a normal sort of light coat, which is basically spraying it down, and when it starts to look just about to start look wet, we just move along, right? We don't want it to stay looking wet or cool enough or getting wet at all. Right, I'm just moving along. Well, there is going to be a bit of drying time to sort of wait out on this model. So, you know, if you've got any questions, you might want to sort of get them in now, ready for when I do have to put this model down and let it sort of dry. But yeah, sorry, our thinners. Then I'm going to pour in our paint, which is, as I say, thicker than I thought it was. In fact, that's really coming out thick. I'm going to have to maybe try a different. I'm just going to pour this away because that's really coming out thick. I think it's an old pot of paint. Right, so I don't want to risk it. Right, so I need to find. I'm sure I brought some new ones. Where they've gone, I've just got to go find. So I'm just cleaning out my. No, that's not it. Oh, here you go. Maybe we could try out some Vallejo instead. Excuse me. If you ever have your paint sort of dry up like that, I mean, it's not sort of like a case of you've got to throw it in the bin. I mean, later off on camera, I'll probably just sort of like mix, you know, get like some like bits of wood and sort of maybe sort of get in there and sort of stir it or something like that. It's just gone a bit sort of clumpy and clunky, and you don't want to be spraying that through your airbrush. Right. Yeah, I think I'll try our Vallejo this time. Right. As you can see, it does sediment at the bottom, so you do want to make sure you give it a damn good shake. So let's put AK out the way. Tell this is live. Oh, there it is. Okay, I found another primer. Actually, we've got the ammo one. Maybe that one. I think that's a newer pot. I do need to clean out my airbrush. Let's try out the ammo because I know that one is newer. Again, you've got a little ball bearing in there. You can hear that. Make sure it's shaking up nicely. Now this is definitely the thinner one. This is the one we don't need to use thinners. Right, we should be able to just pour this straight away into my colour cup. I just want to clean out my airbrush. Right, I'm just pouring in some thinners. Right, and what you can do is I'll pinch the end, and I like to just sort of press down the trigger, pull back slightly, and it gurgles up. And that gurgling is just doing all the cleaning for you, basically, rather than you have to do any wiping or anything. Really, it's just, you know, just gurgles up all the interiors and cleans it up rather good. Right, tip it upside down, have all the bits come out the big colour cup end rather than at the needle end. Give that a nice clean. Right, let's try out our ammo primer. Again, have we got big chunks coming out the end? Yeah, this is what's good to. Yeah, there's a bit of a chunky bit on there. This is the problem, as I say, with these primers, is you've got to be so careful because it does dry up so badly on the ends, and then that leaves all sorts of sort of problems. It's just the nature of these polyurethane type primers. All right, so just cleaning the lid. So hopefully this will spray it, well, pour out a bit better. All right, clean the lid. You don't want bits falling off the lid and going into your colour cup. I'm using about see, that's coming out a lot better now. I'm using about a 20 psi. Right, just nice to spray this through. Right, and then we can just get back to slightly putting a light misty coat down. Oh, that's going down so much nicer. Nice light misty coat. Right. And then if you want, you can press down the trigger and cut to air just to speed up that drying process. Have a quick read, see if anyone's got any questions and answers. No questions. Come on, guys, just throw out any sort of questions, what you might be working on. I'll do my best to sort of answer it for you. Right, so coming back. And I can just probably put down a sort of a lighter coat this time. Not a misty one, not a wet one, not a heavy. Just nice light coat. Right. You probably can't see so well on camera, but that's sort of going down a nice grey now. Right. And I can just spray a bit more. You know, as parts of this dry, I'm sort of spraying the rest. Spraying this wing now because that's had time to dry. There we go. This is a problem with it being live now is, I mean, really this is sort of wet. We've got sort of like two coats going on this side. We've got one this side. Probably leave that, you know, maybe 10 minutes to dry this side, maybe put another coat on. And basically you just want to get good coverage. But I find when it comes to models, I'm basically going to do the top, and then I can probably, once this is dried, maybe leave it for half an hour. I can then sort of like turn it upside down, spray the underside of the model, and you know, again, put about 2 or 3 coats on, get some good coverage, and then maybe leave it half an hour to dry. Now, so if you want to sort of like throw in any questions, I can sort of try and answer them now while we get some drying going on. Maybe, I don't know, we might have some spraying questions or something. Also, when it comes to priming our model here, the one cool thing is about putting a primer down also is we haven't done any of our sort of main spraying yet. So this is a good opportunity to sort of have a look at all your you know, your seam lines, your join lines, and have a look, you know, have we got any seam lines that haven't been quite filled, sanded, and whatnot, any scribing, you know, any sort of potential problems. The primer is going to show it. It's going to show you any of these problems. So this is your last chance to sort of, you know, basically, you know, let the paint dry, get out your filler, do a last bit of filling, you know, maybe even a little bit of sanding, right? It does mean, yes, you do need to sort of, if I was to do some sanding here on this wing, and do some filling. It does mean, yes, okay, I do need to sort of clean it again with the IPA, anti-static cloth, give it a quick sort of primer here, just to sort of, get, it back to the way it was. But yeah, it's with a primer. Once you get paint down, you can see what problems you might have with the model. It's just one of these. It's just one of these things. I mean, until you've got some paint down, you can't exactly see how it's going to look. Right? I mean, you can just cut to air as well to speed up the drying time if you want to, which I'll do while I read any questions. Okay, Matthew's got a pretty sort of hard question here. He's on about the photo etch you put in models, right? The photo etch you put in models, sometimes, I mean, Edard are renowned for it. It'll be like a sort of pre-painted photo etch. They basically print onto the photo etch. It does look rather cool, but the problem is what color did they use for that photo etch, right? So when you want to come along and sort of spray your cockpit, and then you put down your photo etch, you've potentially got your cockpit's one color and your photo etch is another color, like a slightly different shade of gray or whatever it might be. It is a problem, right? And how you tackle that isn't exactly easy, right? It is quite a hard one, really. It's one of these like tasks where you've either sort of got to sort of accept it, or there's no real way around it. I mean, you're potentially going off and searching for all your paints, and you might get the really sort of close shade to that photo etch color, but you still might have to mix in a couple of different colors just to get the shade just right. I mean, it's a pain. I mean, there's just no real sort of way around it. Sadly, it's not good. But I mean, there are a couple of things we can do. For instance, we could go off and although you've sprayed your cockpit a certain color, your photo etch is maybe a slightly, I don't know, a darker shade or something. But what you've also got to remember is, I mean, we're going to be putting on like washes, maybe filters, and all these sort of things that we use to weather our cockpits can actually sort of not bring the colors the same, but it sort of feathers them together a little bit better, and it doesn't look so obvious. It's not a fix, but it sort of helps when you've got all those washes and filters and that on top of it. But it's a case of, if it really does bother you, you're going to be going off and sort of maybe adding a bit of black or white to sort of get the right color match, and basically doing some mixing and stuff. So sadly, it doesn't quite answer the question. There's no way sort of around it. I know I do remember maybe a year ago, Edard, I think they did release some paints that were supposed to be a color match to some of their photo etch colors, but it wasn't like, they've done a paint release for every single color. And to be honest with you, I mean, if it was the exact same shade, it wasn't 100% exact anyway. So it's just one of those things that you kind of have to deal with as a modeler. I'm just going to put the last coat on this. I mean, if you really want to sort of go highly professional, shall we say, with your spraying also, what you also can do if you really want to have a absolute perfect paint job on this is, if you remember, I showed you sort of cleaning the model beforehand and stuff. Well, I mean, you can sort of do that also in between each and every spray job you do. So after this priming, I could come along and just get an anti-static cloth, right? I mean, make sure the paintwork is properly dry before you do it, but you can come along with an anti-static cloth and sort of clean the model again. You know, you can also, I have noticed there's a little hair here. You probably can't see that on camera, but there's a little hair sort of here. Instead of leaving that, we can come in with a fine sanding stick, right? Probably something like this. I mean, this is like more of a buffing sanding stick than actually sanding, and that is enough just to kind of like sand away a hair. But again, remember, make sure that your paintwork is properly dried and cured, gone rock hard. Probably leaving it overnight before you say sand away this bit of a hair that I've noticed here. And then you'd have to sort of maybe just touch up with a bit of primer again, you know, later on. So, you know, there is those procedures you can sort of follow in and around your, you know, all your spraying that you do, right, just to make sure you get that perfect finish. Yeah, which I have noticed a odd little bit here and there. So that top side is now looking, you know, fairly nicely primed. Again, now, as I say, you know, now it's primed. I mean, you want to leave it to dry overnight, but I can sort of inspect it, and I can see there's a little bit of gappage just here, so I might just get a bit of filler on there. Right, so I mean, you know, probably off camera, not too bad. There's another little bit actually just here, bit of filler. Probably use the Vallejo putty technique just to fill and wipe away, so there's no sanding, there's no mess, so I don't have to step back too far in my stages. Right, I am noticing there's a little bit of a gap there. This is supposed to be a seam line, but it does sort of dip inwards there, so maybe actually I'm going to have to get some filler and sanding going on here, which means I'm going to have to go through the whole procedure of like cleaning, you know, anti-static cloths, reprime, that kind of thing. So although, I mean, you know, although, you know, we've entered the spraying stage, by putting the primer on, I have noticed that there's still a bit more work to do. There's a bit more, you know, filling, sanding and whatnot to go on with this. But really, normally, once you've done your first lot of priming, get rid of any mistakes, and pretty good to go into some spraying. So this does need a nice bit of time to dry now, because for me to spray the underside, I need to hold it here. And for me to hold it there means I'm going to be pressing down, and I'm going to mess up my paintwork. So I do want to leave it at least a good half an hour for that to dry before I turn it upside down and start spraying it. So I will be doing that off camera. It's been about an hour. I mean, if we've got no more questions and answers, I might call it a night. I'm just going to go off and have a little pee break, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay. Right then, just back again. So yeah, we've had about an hour on this. We need a load of drawing to be done. Looking at some more questions. Gerard's asking me if I'm going to Telford. I'm not actually going to Telford this year. I know Telford is good for those of you who haven't been. Great modelling show, loads and loads and loads of stores, loads of stuff to go out and buy, loads of cool stuff. I know Airfix normally has a pretty good sort of presence there as well. Yeah, so if you are going, enjoy that. I'm not going there this year. Now, as far as the Wellington goes, you know, I've got it all off camera. I'll finish priming it, do any of those touch-ups that I've already discussed. So next Friday at 6 o'clock, we'll be live, and we'll probably be going on doing pre-shading, you know, putting down the main colors and everything. So that'd be kind of cool. And actually, we've got to sort of deal with black paint also. So that will be a good one to sort of watch, because we'll be using all sorts of different colors to get that black paint on there. And then we've got the 2-stage camo. So hopefully next Friday will be a good one, and hopefully I'll be a bit more prepared, because, you know, I've been down in the weather with getting a cold and stuff, so I wasn't so prepared tonight. But next week should be a good one. So until next time, my name is Bob Waldron, and I hope you've enjoyed.